Greetings, YouTube. Before we begin reading and discussing the frame rate issues discussion board thread currently plaguing some summoners to the point that they have discussed it on the thread, made several comments on it behind the scenes, etc., I want to be completely transparent with saying that on my iPhone 10, I have yet to see this since downloading the new patch. Really that much last month. The two main things that I have seen in the past month that have affected me are lag unexpectedly during fights that make me feel like I'm running in quicksand. But more than that, and this is something that has continued straight into the new patch, my game crashes at random on its own every 20 minutes. Sometimes I get lucky and it's at the end of an arena fight that I can restart, and then sometimes I get incredibly unlucky and it happens right as I'm entering, not even ending, entering an Alliance quest fight. And it's the point where it's triggered when I hit the fight button. And the fight hasn't loaded. There's no chance for the fight to even start. I think in the back of my mind, well, maybe it quit so early that it didn't register it on the server. But of course, as soon as you hit the fight, it does. Come back, had no attempt at the fight, and yet I've lost half my health. I've heard multiple horror stories to a worse degree of summoners encountering that in Alliance War, and that seems to be a problem that has been going on now for months, even going back to the last couple years. And my other apps don't do it, but this one, it's almost like it's like a 4K TV that's running on like a DVD server where it just gets overheated, panics, and crashes. And I don't know what the fix is, but I know that's what I've seen. Alright, Legendary Noob here. Hello, I have recently updated the game today and everything was running okay. I would even say better than usual. But then after the compensation packages were out, my frame rate dropped dramatically and it stuck at 30 frames per second or below. Before, my game would run at a consistent 60 frames per second and would sometimes dip below if my phone got hot. But after I let my phone cool off, it would go back to 60 frames per second. The problem is now that my phone is not hot at all, and the game is still stuck at 30 frames per second or lower and won't go back to 60 frames per second. Anyone else having this issue? So, this is a classic textbook example of what you should do in a forum post. He didn't use profanity. He wasn't ugly. He was just objectively reporting about what's happening to him. Good job. King Dog. My device is Galaxy Fold 2. The game has been running fine on my device with little to no problems other than Android devices have suffered from. Yet after the update, my frames per second MCFC now caps at 30, even though it was hitting 60 just fine yesterday. I also tested the game on my mother's Android device, Galaxy S20, and the same results being 30. Just wondering if anyone else is having this issue. In the past, it was running at half the device settings. If your phone was set to 60, you could only get 30 frames per second, 120, 60, etc. Try setting it to 120, you should get 60 in the game. By the way, does the Fold 2 have the expected good graphics now? Blah, blah, blah. Same here, and it's so jarring and distracting. Has always been able to do 60 frames per second, capped at 30, blah, blah, blah. Always felt smoother, S20, having the same issue on the S20. So, you can see that some people say they've always run at 30 frames per second, no big deal, but others, not so much. There is this suggestion to have it be capped at half. And King Dog, pretty good comment here. My device is always set at 120 frames per second. I tried both with no difference in frames per second. As for the graphic problems, I have not had those visual bugs. The graphics look bad, and you use Samsung's Game Plugins app to help with performance. It can reduce the overall quality of the game, so I would check to see if it has. The only visual bug I've noticed is with Odin Special 3, where he glitches a bit. And, okay, same here, S20 Plus at 120. Used to be super smooth, now it locks 30 frames per second in menus, and the input delay in fights is near unplayable for me. Yikes. Used to run like this when I put my screen refresh rate to 60, but now it forces it even at 120. And then, of course, Rush Cat here is saying 30 frames per second. Honestly, it feels less than 30 frames per second. Legendary Noob comes back. My game would run at 60 frames per second on my Galaxy S20 with 120 enabled. I have the same phone, and it's running terrible. So he's tried all these things. Okay, so when you get desperate, sometimes you hit me up because why not? I guess I'm the YouTube version of what the Great Seaton would call Desperation Station. Look, as this is mainly a Android Discuss problem and I run it on an iPhone, I can't give you any additional feedback on my end. All I can tell you is that I'm going to use my platform to get this information out and hope that the comment section can further discuss this. The biggest thing is just to know that, historically speaking, Android frame rate issues and lag issues have not been easily fixed. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but sometimes when this kind of issue happens, they'll eventually fix it, but it'll be in the October update, which of course is unacceptable for those of you who, well, it's technically not even September yet on the calendar. So hopefully you can figure it out. I know that there are a lot of people going through the same thing, but there are also a lot of good suggestions out there. So we discussed it, kept the video under 6 minutes. Let's end it here. Thanks for the feedback. Thanks for the future comments in advance. Have a good one.